It's time now for one more thing. I want to go first. I'm just kidding. I don't. They put me first. I don't want to be.
Okay.
I don't want to be.
You high?
No, something's. Are you all right?
You high again?
I want to go home.
Why is she smoking before the show?
No, we've got to put a
Last
stop
night
to this.
I got to go to an event called the Soldier Strong.
Yes.
Soldier Strong's Benefit Gala. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing advanced medical technologies to veterans. And I met this guy, Dan Rose. He was injured while on active duty. He was paralyzed. And last night he stood and walked using the ExoGT wearable exoskeleton. He was paralyzed after a 900-pound IED in Afghanistan went off underneath his Humvee. He did not let this be the end. He decided that you just keep going. You try to find new challenges. He now lives in Denver, Colorado. Come to find out, hey, Mom, he lives in Wash Park. So I'm going to hook you guys up so you can, on your walks, you can go over and say hi to him. He did say to me that the first time I stood up, I realized I'd forgotten what it was like to be eye level with everyone. It was like standing on top of a mountain. So Soldier Strong is a really great organization. Martha McCallum is a big supporter of it. So check them out.
Nice.
Kimberly.
Absolutely.
Very
Fantastic. Well, it's time now for Kimberly's Food Court. Yes, yes, indeed. All righty, folks, it's National Donut Day. Jesse's very happy, and we've got a little bit of Dunkin' Donuts here. So this is celebrated annually on the first Friday in June, and it was established in 1938 to honor the Salvation Army Donut Lassies, women who served the treats to soldiers during World War II. Look at Jesse's digging in. Wow, this is a crowd pleaser. And the Salvation Army is teaming up with Entenmann's to deliver treats to more than 8,500 veterans as well.
Nice.
And more than 10 billion donuts are made every year in the U.S., and they estimate that the donut store industry rakes in nearly $12 billion in revenues each year. So
I'm
people love
surprised it's
the
only
donut.
10 million donuts a year that are made in
I'm
the
going to
United
take this one. Look, it's like a little light pink.
All right, Jesse, swallow that donut and do your one more thing.
All right, so Diamond and Silk.
Oh, this is delicious.
They came to New York, and we decided what better to do with them than send them to Harlem to ask people what they think of Donald Trump.
Oh, my God.
I think he's a bigot.
You think he's a who?
A bigot.
Wait a minute, hold up, don't hold me back.
I won't hold you back. I won't hold you back.
Okay, can you give me the definition of a bigot?
A racist. He started a lot of chaos when there's no need to be chaos.
What did he say?
He says a lot of things he ain't
Like
supposed
what?
to say.
Name one.
He talks about people that he shouldn't talk about.
Like who?
I am speechless. I am without speech.
Okay, so there you have it, Diamond and Silk, this Saturday night, 8 o'clock. Also, Best of the Party Bros and the 30-year-old who was just evicted from his parents' house.
All right,
Who are you gonna give a makeover
Greg, you
to?
get to
Yes,
go
I'm
next.
gonna
All right, tomorrow night, 10 p.m., Saturday, the Greg Gutfeld Show. I got the great Rob Long, the excellent comedian David Angelo, of course, Kat Timp, and Tyrus. This is our third year happy birthday show. It's going to be really special.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Will you have snacks?
Yes, but first, Greg's fitness tips. As you know, I was the editor of Men's Health, and I care about how your body looks. So the best way to get your biceps in shape, buy my book and lift it as though it's a barbell. Yes, Greg Gutfeld, the Gutfeld Monologues. It's at Amazon right now. You can go there and order two. Order two. So you don't have
That's
the
a good idea.
muscular imbalance.
That's a good idea.
All right, I shall shut up now.
That's a good idea. All right, Geraldo.
Seeing the Seinfeld clip, I was not on Friends. I was on Seinfeld's finale.
Easy mistake,
Not
though.
the Friends finale. Yeah, easy.
I love them.
So anyway, I told you that I was going on my trip, taking my boat to Cleveland by water. I did it. Here we are leaving New York Harbor. Craig and I went up there. We went up the Hudson River to the Erie Canal, which is this historic, amazing place. We were greeted there by school kids were there. We were the first boat through this season.
Did you get your boat waxed?
We had storms when we hit Lake Erie. It was very dramatic.
Wow.
It was wonderful. And we made it in 5 days, 2 hours to Cleveland, my new home in Cleveland. The Great Lakes are exquisite.
Is that a Hinckley?
It's a Hinckley, a picnic boat. I've had it for 20 years.
You guys know the names of boats. That's cool.
You're so cool. All right, that's it for us. I bet you're glad. We'll be back here on Monday, though. Special report is up next. Hey, Bret.
I'm not glad. Thanks, Shannon. The summit is back on, and the Korean War may soon be off. The president touts what he calls a historic milestone in unemployment and whatever happened to the fight over the treatment of LGBT people. This is Special Report. Good evening, welcome to Washington. I'm Bret Baier. We begin tonight with the resurrection of the summit, officially. A little more than a week after the meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un was declared dead, it sprang back to life this afternoon at the White House. The president making the announcement following a meeting with the top North Korean official who carried a letter from his country's reclusive leader. It will happen, as of now, June 12th in Singapore, as originally scheduled 3 weeks ago. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts has specifics. Good evening, John.
Bret, good evening to you. It was the first time that President Trump has met an official from North Korea. The former head of Pyongyang's spy agency, Kim Jong-chul, a man who's actually been sanctioned by the United States, came calling at the White House today. And after 75 minutes together in the Oval Office, the two produced a breakthrough.
We'll be meeting on June 12th in Singapore. It went very well. It's really a get-to-know-you kind of a situation.
In one historic moment, President Trump and the highest-ranking North Korean official to visit the White House in 18 years put the summit back on track. President Trump today optimistic that Kim Jong-un is committed to denuclearization.
I think they want to do that. I know they want to do that. They want other things along the line. They want to develop as a country.
A week ago, President Trump shocked North Korea and the world, sending a letter to Kim Jong-un canceling the summit. It was a high-wire diplomatic move, but one the president insists paid off.
I canceled it in response to a very tough statement, and I think we're over that.
Kim Jong-chul came to the White House today with a letter, this one from Kim Jong-un, which he hand-delivered to President Trump. At first, the president seemed to indicate he had read it.
It was a very interesting letter, and at some point it may be appropriate, and maybe I'll be able to give it to you. Maybe you'll be able to see it, and maybe fairly soon.
But later, said he hadn't.
I haven't seen the letter yet. I purposely didn't open the letter. I haven't opened it. I didn't open it in front of the director. I said, would you want me to open it? He said, you can read it later. I may be in for a big surprise, folks.
The meeting was supposed to be brief. White House officials said Kim would arrive, walk down the colonnade to the Oval Office, deliver the letter, then leave. But the meeting went a full hour and 15 minutes, the president and the vice chairman seeming to enjoy a very courteous relationship. The president lowered expectations for his meeting with Kim Jong-un, saying it would likely be just the start of a long negotiation.
We'll see where it leads, but we're going to be June 12th. We'll be in Singapore. It'll be a beginning. I don't say, and I've never said it happens in one meeting. You're talking about years of hostility, years of problems, years of really hatred between so many different nations.
But the president added, well, just maybe the United States and North Korea would sign an agreement on June 12th to finally end the Korean War.
We talked about ending the war. And, you know, this war has been going on. It's got to be the longest war, almost 70 years. That's something that could come out of the meeting.
One possible hiccup in all of this, the meeting yesterday between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Kim Jong-un. President Trump's initial reaction to that, he didn't like it one bit.
I didn't like the Russian meeting yesterday. I said, what's the purpose of that? But it could be a positive meeting. If it's a positive meeting, I love it. If it's a negative meeting, I'm not happy.
President Trump also revealed today that he had an entirely new package of sanctions ready to go against North Korea in the case that the summit fell apart. Those are on hold for now, but the president is keeping them in his back pocket just in case things go off the rails before June 12th. Bret?
Never know. John Roberts live on the North Lawn. John, thanks. The president says the Singapore trip is on. And special report will be there on the ground. Sunday, June 10th, we'll have a weekend edition of the show at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. local, if you're keeping track there. The following Monday and Tuesday, we'll be covering all the breaking news from that trip. Special report live from Singapore in 2 weeks' time. Maybe. President Trump is touting new unemployment numbers tonight. The unemployment rate fell to an 18-year low of 3.8% in May. The economy adding 223,000 new jobs.
We have reached yet one more historic milestone, with 3.8% unemployment just announced and another all-time record low African American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment at an all-time low in history. We're very honored by that.
Let's get reaction and analysis now from Deirdre Bolton of Fox Business Network, who joins us from New York. Good evening, Deirdre.
Good evening, Brett. This is a standout report. The U.S. economy hit a record, so May's data marking the 92nd straight month of job growth, so that's a record streak. American employers hiring the most workers in healthcare. That was by a clear margin, but then that's followed by retail, professional services, then construction, and leisure and hospitality round out the top 5 categories. So unemployment for African Americans fell to a new low of 5.9%. Female job seekers, a low as well, 3.4%. The data points indicate an easier start for recent graduates, too. Job openings are at a 2-decade high. Anecdotally, some company leaders say it's difficult to find highly skilled worker positions. Some even complain that once they find talent, they have to pay more to keep valuable employees on board. Those comments fit with the increase in wage growth that we saw in May. For about a decade, economists were wondering, how is the economy growing without wages going higher? And it was this really stubborn statistic. But as of today, that is changing. So month on month, year on year figures both show that wage growth is up 0.1% better than forecast. It's pretty tough to find fault with this report. It signals the right balance for investors, too, which is why you saw the stock market react as it did. The Dow closed up by more than 200 points. S&P 500 and the NASDAQ each by 1%. This report is solid enough to indicate that the Federal Reserve will raise interest rates as forecast at the next meeting, June 12th and 13th. Economists say the economy in the U.S. is strong enough to take the raise. Right.
Deirdre, thank you. Have a great weekend. As Deirdre said, the markets were positive today. Results mixed for the 4-day trading week. The Dow lost about a half percentage point. The S&P 500 gained about a half. The NASDAQ jumped 1 2/3. President Trump is calling on Canada and the European Union to do more to bring down their trade surpluses with the U.S. The comment coming as American allies are complaining loudly about the president's decision to impose tariffs on imported steel and aluminum. Correspondent Benjamin Hall reports tonight from London on what's being said and done.
The steel wars are heating up after countries across the world reacted angrily to President Trump's new tariffs. Now Canada, Mexico and the European Union are fighting back, imposing counter tariffs amid growing fears of a trade war. Today, the European Union issued a list of tariffs on $1.6 billion of U.S. goods, ranging from Harley-Davidsons to bourbon and food products. Their trade commissioner said President Trump's announcement had weakened transatlantic relations.
It is pure protectionism. European steel and aluminium export to the United States cannot be seen as a threat to their internal security.
Meanwhile, Mexico complained that the tariffs will distort international trade and said it will penalize U.S. imports, including pork, apples, grapes and cheeses. While Canada has announced plans to slap counter tariffs on $12.8 billion of U.S. products, ranging from steel to yogurt and even toilet paper. Today, President Trump defended his move.
I want fair trade. I like free trade, but I want fair trade. At a minimum, I want fair trade. And we're going to have it for our workers and for our companies.
While his chief economic advisor brushed off concerns over the dispute.
A family quarrel. There's trade disputes, and it's a family quarrel. And if you keep the lines of communication open, which everybody wants to do, this thing can work out.
Europe's largest automaker, Volkswagen, said there are now fears that this marks the start of a negative spiral of measures and countermeasures, which is already causing concern among markets.
We don't want this to escalate, but maybe we need to adopt strategies like in the Cold War, right? When it was important to engage in deterrence and to say, if you do now attack the car industry, we will go after, let's say, the American digital economy.
Now the EU plans to bring its case to the World Trade Organization, claiming the US actions are illegal, something President Macron of France told President Trump today during a phone call. He also warned that economic nationalism like this leads to war. Economic nationalism is what President Trump campaigned on, putting America first and renegotiating fairer trade deals. But around the world, this move is being seen as an attack on close allies. Bret?
Benjamin Hall in London. Benjamin, thank you. There are concerns tonight that the president's trade policy could end up pushing many of America's neighbors into a closer economic relationship with Russia. Correspondent Rich Edson looks at the prospects of that tonight from the State Department.
Critics charge President Trump is needlessly antagonizing European allies with tariffs on their aluminum and steel. The United States and Europe also disagree on climate change, the Iran nuclear agreement, and defense spending. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker says that each time he thinks of President Trump, he's lost. And he also says, quote, I do think we have to reconnect with Russia. I'm not very happy with the state of our relations. Diplomats and analysts have complained of the deterioration of the U.S.-European alliance, warning of a diminished counterweight to Russia, and even providing cover for European firms to expand their business there.
We're seeing, I think, France especially, but also Germany trying to play both sides, trying to play the United States and Russia at the same time. That realization that Russia is not a reliable economic partner, that it is a security threat to Europe much more than to the United States, has not quite sunk in, unfortunately.
Russia mostly sells Europe natural resources and energy. Work is beginning on a massive, controversial gas pipeline between Russia and Germany. Russia's Nord Stream 2 would double Russia's gas export capacity across the Baltic Sea. The United States ambassador to Germany tells Fox News the administration pushes European firms and governments to pass on business with Russia.
The strategy for the United States here in Germany and throughout Europe is really to remind European businesses just what they're dealing with when they deal with Russia.
Ambassador Grinnell points to European Union figures showing Russian trade with the EU is down since Russia invaded Ukraine and seized Crimea, from nearly $380 billion in bilateral trade in 2014 to around $233 billion in 2015. Almost $212 billion in 2016 and more than $260 billion last year.
The Russian offense and the activities speak for themselves, and many businesses throughout Europe are very uncomfortable with that.
The European Commission president says that while Europe will never forget Russia's invasion of Ukraine and annexation of Crimea, it must work with Russia where it can, adding that the Russia bashing must end. Bret?
Rich Edson at the State Department. Rich, thanks. Flightline employees at Boeing's South Carolina plant have voted to unionize. It's a rare victory for organized labor in the South. The aerospace giant campaigned against the move. The company says the vote is illegal and will appeal. The lead union organizer commended the workers for standing up to Goliath amid a, quote, nasty campaign. Up next, will Democrats go progressive or stick with the Obama strategy in 2020? We'll take a look. First, here's what some of our Fox affiliates around the country are covering tonight. Fox 5 in Las Vegas with what appears to be a tentative labor agreement that would cover about a quarter of the 50,000 hotel and casino workers threatening to strike. The Culinary Workers Union says the new 5-year deal covers about 12,000 workers at 9 casino resorts on the Las Vegas Strip. Fox 2 in Detroit, as lawmakers could vote early next week to legalize recreational marijuana there. That would take the issue out of the hands of Michigan voters in November. A pro-pot coalition, including Democrats there, want voters to decide the matter this fall. But for the first time, the GOP Senate leader reports he has the votes to legalize pot without a vote of the people in a referendum. And this is a live look at the Missouri capital of Jefferson City, where a new governor will be sworn in there momentarily. This is from Fox 2 in St. Louis. The big story there tonight. Missouri gets that new governor. A prayer service for Lieutenant Governor Mike Parson, who assumes the top spot after the resignation of fellow Republican Eric Greitens has just ended in Jefferson City. Greitens was facing possible impeachment over a series of scandals. And now the new governor will be sworn in. That's tonight's live look outside the Beltway. From Special Report, we'll be right back. President Trump is blasting the cost of the Russia collusion investigation. He tweeted today. AP has just reported that the Russian hoax investigation has now cost our government over $17 million and going up fast. No collusion except by the Democrats. That figure was released in a report by the Justice Department. It says it is dedicated to ensuring the funds are being used in a responsible and transparent manner. We are still 5 months from the midterm elections, but it's apparently never too early to talk about the presidential race. One Democrat who's admittedly thinking about running has already shown up in New Hampshire. Tonight, correspondent Peter Ducey looks at whether Eric Holder's early push tells us anything about which direction the Democrats are headed.
The first in the nation primary state just got its first visit from an Obama administration alum who may want to challenge Trump.
There are some assumptions about why I'm here in New Hampshire.
Eric Holder told a crowd of business leaders and activists on the campus of St. Anselm University in New Hampshire today that his announcement about 2020 will come in the early part of 2019.
What I've said about the presidency is that there's something that I'm considering. Support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Holder was the first African-American Attorney General and also the first Attorney General to be held in contempt of Congress when he didn't cooperate with their Fast and Furious investigation. He would also be a first-time candidate.
Not a career politician, never run for elected office.
The recently released Comey memos featured the former FBI director's criticism of both Holder and Obama for becoming too friendly with each other. That's something President Trump, who says he regrets hiring the current Attorney General, actually admired in December when he told the New York Times, quote, Holder protected President Obama, totally protected him. When you look at the things that they did, and Holder protected the president, and I have great respect for that, I'll be honest, that appearance of closeness will be critical.
He's not a household name to a lot of Democratic voters across the country. So that's one of his biggest challenges. But, you know, he's going to try to ride this Obama wave. If there's a lot of nostalgia for former President Obama, that's the play that Holder is capitalizing on.
But Holder says he only wants to make that play if he could win.
Can you beat Donald Trump? Two guys from Queens. That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. You know, New Yorkers know how to talk to other New Yorkers.
Democratic primary voters in New Hampshire overwhelmingly went for Bernie Sanders in 2016, and now Eric Holder is on their radar, but he's just one of about 24 Democrats, including Sanders, who are believed to want to at least research a run in 2020. Bret?
Peter, thank you. A judge in Iowa has temporarily blocked the most restrictive abortion law in the country from taking effect next month. The ruling came after an agreement between lawyers for the state and abortion rights groups. The law bans most abortions if a fetal heartbeat can be detected. Pro-choice groups argue it's unconstitutional. An attorney representing the state says the goal now is to quickly get the case before a judge so a decision can be made. In tonight's Whatever Happened To segment, the treatment of LGBT individuals. That issue is part of the changing cultural landscape in the U.S., of course, but is it going backward, excuse me, under a conservative administration? Correspondent Doug McElway looks at that question tonight.
I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and I believe that the Bible clearly teaches that a marriage is between a man and a woman.
That, in a nutshell, is why Jack Phillips refused to bake a wedding cake for a gay couple, Charlie Craig and David Mullins. They sued. Phillips appealed in the case Masterpiece Cake Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission is expected to be decided by the Supreme Court any day. At stake is whether anti-discrimination laws can force a business to express speech with which it disagrees.
Shop owners can absolutely decide what they serve. They can make determinations on whether or not they make wedding cakes at all, or what kinds of designs that they place onto a product. But when a business is open, they really should be open to all.
The decision will occur as U.S. cultural standards over sexuality and gender are rapidly evolving. North Carolina, often considered Bible Belt country, found that out the hard way 2 years ago when it passed a bill restricting transgender people's bathroom access. The backlash was severe. The NCAA and the NBA pulled games from the state. That and the threatened loss of other businesses forced state lawmakers to roll back the restrictions. The Trump administration has filed an amicus brief in support of the Masterpiece Cake Shop, but it too is moderating its position in this broader culture war. The planned ban on transgendered in the military has been narrowed. They may serve in their biological sex if there's been no history of gender dysphoria. The image of socially conservative Vice President Mike Pence swearing in the first openly gay ambassador to Germany, Richard Grenell, with his husband holding the Bible, spoke volumes about how much standards have changed. To comply with Colorado's Civil Rights Commission, Jack Phillips no longer bakes any wedding cakes.
That cost us 40% of our income at the time. The emotional toll on my family and just my life in general has been pretty dramatic. I've had death threats, hateful emails, hateful phone calls, protests, a lot of things that just for trying to live according to my faith shouldn't happen.
The High Court decision on Masterpiece Cake Shop may again hinge on the swing vote of Justice Anthony Kennedy, who in 2015 wrote the 5-4 majority opinion which legalized gay marriage. Bret?
Doug, thank you. Up next, comedian Samantha Bee still has her job. Roseanne Barr does not. Is that a double standard? We'll take a look. First, beyond our borders tonight, Italy's president swore in Western Europe's first populist government today. It features a mix of anti-establishment and right-wing ministers who have promised an Italy-first agenda, and that has alarmed Europe's political establishment. The leader of Spain's Socialist Party will become the new prime minister. This follows a no-confidence vote today in Parliament in Spain for the existing conservative government there. Pedro Sanchez is promising to address what he calls the social emergencies of the country's citizens after years of austerity measures. An independent World Health Organization panel is backing away from the UN Health Agency's own call 2 years ago to tax sugary drinks. A new report on diseases such as cancer, obesity, and diabetes recommends taxes on tobacco and alcohol, but it drops any recommendation to tax sugary beverages. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. President Trump is asking why comedian Samantha Bee still has her job. Bee is still employed by TBS after comments she made that the White House called vile and vicious about Ivanka Trump. This comes, of course, on the heels of Roseanne Barr's offensive tweet that resulted in the cancellation of her TV show. Senior correspondent Adam Housley tonight on charges that there's a double standard at work.
A no-show on the red carpet, even though her program was being honored at the Television Academy with a Social Change Award. Controversial comedian Samantha Bee continues to deal with the aftershock of this.
Let me just say, one mother to another, do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
While TV cameras weren't allowed inside, Bee accepted the award and then again accepted responsibility, saying in part, quote, "Every week I strive to show the world as I see it, unfiltered. Sometimes I should probably have a filter. I accept that. I take it seriously when I get it right, and I do take responsibility when I get it wrong." Back on the carpet, stars seem to support Bee and her apology, saying her harsh words for first daughter Ivanka Trump were different than Roseanne Barr's racial tweet about former Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett.
I don't even try comparing the two. I think it was a matter of intent and the situation. One was a TV show that's about comedy and pushing it to the edge of political satire, and the other one was a tweet. Those are two different things.
Actress Sally Field also weighed in, tweeting, quote, "I like Samantha Bee a lot, but she is flat wrong to call Ivanka an expletive. Expletives are powerful, beautiful, nurturing, and honest." The controversy did not elude President Trump, who via Twitter attacked Bee's network TBS and Hollywood hypocrisy. Why aren't they firing no-talent Samantha Bee for the horrible language used on her low-rating show? A total double standard, but that's okay. We are winning, and we'll be doing so for a long time to come.
Hollywood, TBS, Time Warner, they've sent a message that you are allowed to attack a conservative woman in the most vile of terms, and they're okay with that.
As for Roseanne Barr, she says she begged ABC executives to keep her show for people's jobs and to let her redeem herself. While Samantha Bee hasn't lost her show, she is losing sponsors. So far, Auto Trader and State Farm have suspended their advertising. Bret?
Adam, thank you. So what do you think? Do you think Samantha Bee will lose her job? Let me know on Twitter at Bret Baier. You can use the hashtag special report, or on Facebook at facebook.com/BretBaierSR. Military researchers are right now testing a new unmanned aerial vehicle that could go where helicopters cannot and give injured warriors a fighting chance at survival. It looks like something straight out of a science fiction movie. Here's Chief Correspondent Jonathan Hunt.
It is real, it is flying, and we are going to have it here in the United States in the next few years.
This is it, the Cormorant, a flying vehicle that could not only save American lives on battlefields a world away, but also on highways right here at home.
There's the concept of the golden hour, that in order to maximize survivability in an accident, you need to get to that victim and get that victim evacuated and to medical attention within an hour.
The idea for a vehicle that can go where helicopters can't was born out of the 2006 Israel-Hezbollah war, where it took on average 5.5 hours to evacuate wounded Israeli soldiers.
One is the ground-to-air fire. The other is that because of the physical limitations of the helicopter's rotor, it cannot land in a mountainous or obstacle-rich area.
The Cormorant is currently being designed and tested in Israel, with keen interest and support from the Israeli military. But the long-term plan is for production to move to the United States and for both pilotless and piloted models to be available for military and civilian emergencies.
Disaster response, nuclear, biological, chemical decontamination, a dirty bomb in a city, butting against the wall of a building and rescuing people, and so on. This aircraft can do all of that because it doesn't have the overhead rotors.
Urban Aeronautics says it hopes to be producing the Cormorant here in the U.S. by 2022. The company calls it a win-win for everyone: Israeli technology, U.S. production, and potentially countless lives saved. Bret?
Jonathan, thank you. Former President George H.W. Bush is tweeting out an update on his condition and says he's reading his granddaughter's new book about his life with First Lady Barbara Bush. Mr. Bush was hospitalized earlier this week for the second time since his wife's death in April. Today's message: enjoying a great book and a wonderful walk down memory lane this morning. Yet another reminder of just how lucky I have been in life. Very proud of the author and co-author, too. More at greatamericanlovestory.com. This is a Fox News alert. We're just getting word of an appointment that the president is making on Homeland Security Advisor. Rear Admiral Fears is going to be the new Homeland Security Advisor. Douglas Fears has been selected to be the president's Homeland Security Advisor. He takes the position once occupied by Tom Boster. That position was reorganized to report to the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, but he is the new Homeland Security Advisor reporting to the NSA. There you have it. Back in business, President Trump says his summit with Kim Jong-un will go on as previously scheduled. We'll get reaction from the panel when we return.
We'll be meeting on June 12th in Singapore. It went very well. I think it's a getting to know you meeting plus. I never said it goes in one meeting. I think it's going to be a process. But the relationships are building, and that's a very positive thing. They want to develop as a country. That's going to happen. I told them today, take your time. You can go fast, we can go slowly. We have very significant sanctions on that, but we had hundreds. We have hundreds that are ready to go. But I said, I'm not going to, but why would I do that when we're talking so nicely?
It's on again. June 12th, Singapore. The summit, and today a top North Korean official delivering a letter that was eventually read, we're told, by President Trump as he headed out to Camp David. But the summit is back on, and where do we go from here? Let's bring in our panel. Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and president. Leslie Marshall, syndicated talk radio host, and Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Tom, significant. We've talked about how the terminology has kind of changed and how the president is saying, you know, it might be one, might be two, might be a number of summits.
Walking back expectations a little bit, but it seems the president still believes that denuclearization is on the table. Not sure that that's where the North Koreans are. But yeah, look, the summit is now back on track, and by all accounts is going to happen in less than 2 weeks. And we were just told, you know, by everybody not too long ago that it would be impossible for this to happen, and yet here we are. So
listen.
I was wrong. Do you remember last time I was on your show when you were in Los Angeles? Yeah, I think we're doing that, right? Okay. We were in Los Angeles. I said it would be on. I was correct there, but I said it wouldn't happen on the 12th. And again, it still may not. You know, I think that Kim Jong-un and the president, North Korea and the United States, have very different ideas of what denuclearization mean. And I don't think that Kim Jong-un is going to budge with regard to the troops being on the peninsula in South Korea. I don't think there'll be any kind of a deal unless all troops are gone. We're not going to remove all the troops, so I don't think we're going to be able to get the kind of deal we want. And I think that's why we're hearing the posturing that we're hearing right now from both the president and Pompeo with regard to, this is going to take a little time, we're going to have more than one meeting, and I think that's why why, because I think there are two different definitions here and ideas of what they hope to achieve.
I know a little bit about summits. Wrote a little book about Reagan and Gorbachev, and you know, sometimes it's an evolution. Sometimes it does take more than one, and they took Geneva, Reykjavik, Washington, and Moscow.
Yeah, and in this case, if you just think back to when the Trump administration started, there were no lines of communication open. Even there were no back channel lines of communication open. And here you have, visiting the White House today, a top North Korean official, and really actually a pretty bad guy who was visiting the White House.
Spy chief.
Yeah, which is, you know, it's really interesting just how far things have gotten. I think it is good that people are resetting expectations about what can be accomplished at this first summit, but just the fact that people are meeting is really significant. It's also worth remembering that when Barack Obama said that he would be willing to sit down with bad guys, a lot of people on the right thought that was a really bad idea when he said, you know, I'm willing to sit down with people without agreements beforehand. And I think this shows that sometimes that is a good idea. Sometimes you do have to work with people who might even be, you know, pretty evil people, but just to get things going, and that there might be something good about that.
You know, it's not really known or talked about much, but President Bill Clinton considered going to sit down with Kim Jong-un and instead sent Madeleine Albright to have that, Kim Jong-il, I should say, the father, had that meeting, and that's the picture you have, the Madeleine Albright toasting champagne with him. There was another meeting that concerned the president today. Take a listen.
I didn't like the Russian meeting yesterday. I said, what's the purpose of that? But it could be a positive meeting. If it's a positive meeting, I love it. If it's a negative meeting, I'm not happy. And it could very well be a positive meeting.
I mean, you just hear what's on his mind. I mean, you can't say he's not transparent. I mean, he didn't like the Russian meeting, but he doesn't know what the meeting is about.
That's what's fascinating to me about this is Trump is very transparent and honest, which typically diplomatic speak is much more cagey and sophisticated than that. And he's willing to say, hey, we might get something done, we might not, we'll see, we'll wait and see. It really does have the appearance of a guy who's on a high wire without a net. Which is, you know, a spectacle to watch, but also a little bit frightening. We'll see.
So but the Russian thing did upset some in the foreign policy realm, in that Russia going to meet Kim Jong-un, Leslie, saying essentially, remember us, and what are you doing? And maybe sticking their nose in it.
Not only that, I think Russia's sticking their nose in almost everything we do, especially our elections. Maybe they were helping with that letter the president read or didn't read. But with regard to Kim Jong-un, maybe Kim Jong-un and the North Koreans don't have the, maybe we don't have the upper hand with them, or as much of an upper hand with them as we think. And I think that with that meeting, the president has to remain on his toes even more so.
All right, let me play this one last soundbite, and that is about the tariffs and the implication of that from the president's point of view.
All of these countries, including the European Union, they charge 5 times the tariff. We don't charge tariffs, essentially. They charge 5 times what we charge for tariffs. And I believe in the word reciprocal. You're going to charge 5 times, we're going to charge 5 times. I like free trade, but I want fair trade. At a minimum, I want fair trade.
There's all this pushback, Republicans, Democrats saying, what are we doing with allies? But you know what? Larry Kudlow said this is a family squabble, and we are going to keep the lines of communication open, and we're going to see where this goes.
And free trade is preferable. It's also true that our allies have had really good trade arrangements with us for a very long time. And there were good foreign policy reasons for that, as we were trying to help strengthen these countries during a long Cold War. But the point remains that they charge much higher tariffs than we do. That's not necessarily a great idea. It's not necessarily in our best interest. And these aren't, it's not like we're breaking up a perfectly free trade environment here. We're talking about renegotiating some arrangements.
I mentioned the politics of this, Tom, and as you look at different places that could be affected, it doesn't line up to help Republicans and the president's party in the midterms on this particular issue. I mean, it's more Democrats like Sherrod Brown and Heidi Heitkamp and others who maybe benefit from this.
I think it remains to be seen. I mean, again, this is going to be an election that is a base election. It is all about turning out votes. And so this is something that Trump's voters have. This is one of his campaign promises. This is one of the things that animated the base to turn out for him in 2016.
Even if it knocks down the GDP by a percentage, like by 1 point, I mean, you have a great jobs number today.
Correct.
And if it takes it down like 1%, as Wilbur Ross says it might, And he says that's not a big deal in the big picture. You know, when you have tax cuts that you're supposedly paying for by increasing growth, does that affect people and how they look at this?
It will if it affects their pocketbooks. I mean, if they're paying more for, goods and services that they wouldn't have otherwise paid in October, a few weeks before the election, it'll have a material impact. If the economy keeps humming along and things are fine, even that, it won't affect them. So we'll have to wait and see.
All right, Leslie, you'll be first up after the break. Next up, the Friday lightning round. As I mentioned, those new jobs numbers. Is there a Samantha Bee, Roseanne Barr double standard? Plus winners and losers. All of that.
We have reached yet one more historic milestone. With 3.8% unemployment just announced, African American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment at an all-time low in history.
This stuff is working. We were told it wouldn't work. I know it's early in the game. I accept that. But right now, a year plus into it, it's working.
The White House, the president, touting those new numbers. And as you take a look at them, it is a good jobs report in May. 223,000 jobs added, up from 159 in April. As mentioned, the unemployment rate down to 3.8, down from 3.9 last month, the lowest since early 2000. And you take a look at the economy changes. You can see the real GDP growth, unemployment rate, consumer confidence going up, average hourly earnings going up, ticking up, and then the Dow. Responding really as you look past 11/16, the election, a bumpy ride in the past few months, but look at it now. Back with the panel. Leslie, that's a pretty good story to tell for the White House.
I, a Democrat, am saying these are good numbers. These are good numbers. I mean, you know, everybody left or right wants to have a really good economy. But there is a question for me about wage growth. There is a fear of inflation. There is a fear of the Feds becoming a bit too hawkish. And then going into the midterms, it's not, to your point earlier, it's not just what is on paper, but what do Americans feel. It's not just the economy is stupid, but if on paper, if they feel like, okay, I have more opportunity and I have more money in my paycheck.
Yeah. Which is that consumer confidence number. It's ticking up. The question, I guess, for some on Capitol Hill is why now with the tariff battle, if you're winning.
Right. And yeah, it really is good news. The New York Times headline was something like, we've run out of words to describe how good this is. And it is an affirmation of the Trump policies and also a reminder of how sluggish things were during the Obama era. But it's also true, and to your point, this is not something that's going to last forever, and this could become something difficult for President Trump. They think they can keep this sustained, and there are good reasons to think that, but we do live in a cyclical economy and things could turn, and so it needs to be managed well.
So there are 5 more jobs reports before the November election. Trump's approval rating in our Real Clear Politics average right now is 44%. On the economy, it's 49%. So, and the other number that doesn't get talked about a lot is the right direction number, which is 2 weeks ago in May, hit 40%. That's the highest it's been in 5.5 years. So we focus a lot on sort of the day-to-day, shiny objects, but I think the fundamentals of the numbers show that people are giving Trump credit for this economy, and they're feeling pretty good about it.
All right, speaking of the president, tweeting out, why aren't they firing no talent Samantha Bee for the horrible language used on her low-rating show? Total double standard, but that's okay. We are winning, and we'll be doing so for a long time to come. Obviously, Samantha Bee and Roseanne Barr, it's a big topic today. Leslie.
I don't think these are the same. And the reason I don't think, I think they're both terrible. The reason I don't think these are the same is Roseanne Barr was specifically making unequivocally a racist attack toward a minority individual. Samantha Bee was using a word, the C word, which is, especially as a woman sitting next to me, right? I think, it's just horrific. It's horrific to have somebody call you that. It's really bad when it comes from a man, and I think even worse when it comes from a woman. But I do think they're different because one is racist in nature.
And I just we're doing this segment not linking the two and not saying definitively they're the two. It's the talk in the president's tweet that brought up this discussion.
It's not just the word that she used. She also alleged incest between Ivanka Trump and her father and was very sexually demeaning. I don't think it's a contest between the two. It's inappropriate to fire off a mean and racist tweet. It's also inappropriate to have an entire corporation work on a pre-scripted show where this was a kind of attack. attack. And I think the big problem for people is that they see that if you are outside of the elite liberal consensus, you can lose your entire show for one random horrible tweet, whereas you can have all this pre-planned effort. And the punishment apparently was that Samantha Bee won an award last night. She had an apology that she quickly walked back, and there don't seem to be any actual repercussions.
She is losing some sponsors, we're told. Winners and losers. Here we go, Tom. Winner and then loser.
My winner is 8-year-old Jordan McClin, the boy from the who stole the show at the Right to Try signing ceremony, trying to give Trump a hug. That was a big moment for him and for that bill and all those folks. He suffers from Duchenne muscular dystrophy, by the way. My loser is Michael Avenatti. Rough week for Stormy Daniels' lawyer. He was rebuked by a judge early in the week, and then just today I have a report in the New York Times showing that he lied about the fact that he never solicited funds. He went to some Democrats to try and get them to fund his effort, his legal effort to battle against Trump.
All right, quick, winner and loser.
The winner is Benji, the 13-year-old reporter who, when he asked about gun control, brought the press secretary nearly to tears. She was choked up, and I, as a mom, I just thought he stole the show, and I think he reminded us as Americans what is important to our kids and their future. Loser, Denmark, banning the burqa. And the reason I say this is, as a woman, I do not want any government, and certainly any man, to tell me what I can or cannot wear, nor should anyone tell any woman what they can and cannot wear.
Quick, winner and loser.
Kevin Smith and Steve Scalise. A few months ago, you thought that the Republicans would definitely not keep hold of the House. Things appear to be changing. They have a good shot, and either of these guys could make the next speaker. My loser is J.R. Smith. He was the guy last night who got a rebound with 4.5 seconds left. All he had to do was put the ball up, and he would have either made the shot or gotten fouled, and the Cleveland Cavaliers would have won. Instead, he dribbled it and left the court, and they ended up being so disturbed they lost the game.
They were all losers. Panel, thank you. When we come back, notable quotables.